And one of the things that I'm going to do is I know that I'm going to be dropping other things in, and I want to use this really solid gray. So I'm going to come up to my color palette and pull that up. And you can see that I get my RGB breakdown, and I've got my little web color number at the bottom. So if I copy that web color number, so I just Command C'd it, I can take that now into InDesign, and I can say on all of these B pages, I would like to have that same color background. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a shape, and I'm going to go to my swatches, maybe. There it is. And I'm going to go to new color swatch, and you'll notice if I'm in the RGB palette, I can just put my color in there. So now if I select that color, I should be able to select it for my fill and leave my stroke at none. And now any page that I have applied that B to will get that gray color background. You can do the same thing with an image. If I put an image in there, it's going to show up on all of them. So no matter what you're doing, by having it in that A or B range, it's going to decide based on your master page what goes there. So if you have buttons that are the same on every page, master page, and then they're just going to be there, right? Type's a little trickier because it might be moving around and it's going to say different things. So that's going to get set on your regular pages. But for general need, you've got these things here. All right? Questions about that? So let's go back into Illustrator. So I have this thing that I made, and I want to export it so it's just the artboard. I want it to be kind of trimmed off so that I have enough room to go ahead and put a little bit of information about my piece on here. So I'm going to scooch this over just a bit more. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is that this was a logo competition that I did, and I really am not a big fan of what they wanted to do when they picked my design for the letterhead. So I want to show that I put it in something, but I don't necessarily want it to be the feature item. So I'm going to create something that's got a little bit more of a feature of the logo itself. So once I've got this the way that I want it, here's the key part. It's the size that I want it, and if I'm going to scale anything about it, I'm going to go back to vector because it's going to make it 100%. Now I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to choose to export this item under File. And I'm going to choose to export it into my project folder, which I've kind of nested in here and forgot to pull out. So we'll put it right in here. I'm going to put this in my to be placed folder. The one that I'm working on right now is in my working folder. So it's live and I know I can edit it, and then my to be placed folder is going to be something that's a little bit easier. So we'll call it MGHC. And we'll put it in the to be placed folder. Now, when you put it in that to be placed folder, you can place it as all sorts of different things. Usually for print, we put it into the TIFF format. If you're taking the web class, I would imagine that you're placing things as, what are you placing them as? Are you placing them as JPEGs? Or PNGs, yeah. So one of these two options works really good, either the JPEG or the PNG. I think consistency is key, and also it's much like, for those of you who haven't done web before, talk to some of the people in the web class. The way that things show up digitally can be very different, right? So the key is looking at what's there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to export this as a PNG at 100%. Now it's showing me that it's going to be medium, but I don't need it to be that big, right? The idea is that I want it to be small at 100%. So there's that. Let's see what we get for perfect. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. And then I'm going to go ahead back into my InDesign document. I'll go to one of my blank pages. And I've got File, Place, and we'll go into our Dropbox folder. I don't want to replace anything. I want to just stick in something new. If you want to see your import options, you can look at them here, and it'll tell you what your choices are. You can choose to have a white background. In this case, with a PNG, that's your only choice. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. I'm going to go ahead and click. And when I put it into place, I should find that it lines up perfectly. Now, you'll notice that it included those outside edges, and so that's something that I can solve once it's set in there just by doing a clipping mask. And cut that off, but I have that to go by. Also, when I publish the movie, it's going to publish just to my screen because I have no bleed edge there. So you could also just shrink it down here. Oh. To trim off those edges. So it's, you know, you could do it either place. Now, what you will notice is that when you're looking at this here, because it's placed in there, you may notice that you have some distortion, and what you need to be sure to do is look at it in the actual color space so that you can see it. Again, when you're working in InDesign, it's going to do its best to make sure that what you're working with is really small and somewhat pixelated so that you can move quickly through what you're doing. But you want to make your decisions based on what the item looks like when you make it a PDF and how it views on the screen.